Welcome to YSM Conversations, a gathering place for women who sense something deeper is calling. Together, we believe that the most profound adventures begin within, and that when women gather in deep conversation, something ancient and necessary awakens.
Open the door to a new conversation through generative listening, weaving together generations of wisdom and listening beyond the ears to restore the intelligence your body has always carried and integrate soulfulness into the adventure of your life. This is restoring and connecting to the deeper current running beneath it all.
We are YSM Conversations. Welcome home.
In my years of embodiment work, I knew what I'd built. What I didn't know was what was still waiting to come forward.
What you're about to hear is something we've never done on YSM, at least not like this. Victoria stepped into a soul signature excavation with me, a process where I guide someone through their own self-excavation, using generative listening to uncover what's already inside them, what they know but haven't yet expressed.
I came in curious and remembering to expect the unexpected.
This isn't a conversation about self-excavation. It's the excavation itself.
Most of us don't know what the experience of excavating can be. Have you ever had someone truly present with you in conversation, not just listening, witnessing? What comes forward when that happens? That's what this episode is all about.
We invite you to listen for the moments when something unexpected surfaces. What rises in your own experience when it does. Welcome back, everybody. This is Inner Space, and today is a super special episode. I am here with Victoria McMahon, and we are getting started on a whole new venture that I'm bringing into my business called Wielding Your Light. And it is a process for bringing out that spark within you into the world to become more visible in your passions and your mission and your message in the world. One of the things that I'm offering as part of this journey is a soul signature extraction interview. And this is what Victoria and I are diving into today. And we'll have more as we continue to expand this journey. The soul signature extraction interview is a heart-to-heart conversation primarily. Over the years of doing coaching work, I have identified that my superpower is asking questions. I always tell my clients I don't have the answers, I have the questions. And for this practice, we are going through what I call the infinite glow model. So if you think about an infinity sign, there is a point on the left where it starts, where you start expanding, and then it contracts and comes together, then it expands again, and then comes together. This is the visual representation of what we're going to be doing throughout this conversation. It's called the glow model because there's 4 steps where we expand, then come together, expand, and come together. First, we're gathering everything that Victoria knows, everything that she has learned, and all the wisdom that's deep in her soul. And then we're going to let go of the things that don't resonate as much and don't serve anymore, but they have served in the past. Then from there, I like to open gaps because for each individual person, you are so unique. You know everything that your soul is here to share with the world. And that's where you see gaps in your teachings. And then we weave it all together. So gather, let go, open gaps, weave, glow. So, Victoria, I'm so happy to be here with you. Thank you for saying yes to this journey, and I'm excited to see what comes from our time together today. Victoria and I have known each other for 3 years now. We've met in person once, and we also have a podcast together, which we'll talk about at the end of the episode. Victoria, would you like to just introduce yourself and what drew you to this process?
My name is Victoria McMahon, and why I'm here is to recreate a new vision of who I am moving forward, not only personally, but also as well professionally. I just turned 65. And I redefined in that leading up to moment that day, and now moving beyond, that 65 does not mean retirement to me. It means stepping into what is unimaginably new. I'm here to have the materials that I put forward to others reflect what I can't even imagine I might be doing with others.
I love that you said that, what I can't even imagine doing, because the universe has so much magic in store for you. And it's always bigger and more amazing than our little human brains could ever think up or dream up. I heard you say recreate who you are. And if I know you, I feel like there's a flavor of restoration in there, of restoring who you are at that deeper core, and maybe not as much of the recreation. Am I on the right thread there, or does it feel like more of a recreation?
Feels like I've been in restoration mode for a number of years. So I'm on the threshold of that in a new way. I don't think I'm ever fully restored until I leave the body. And then I'll be like, okay, well, I'm just back in everything. From my yoga training and traditions, the rest and renew, the restore, there's only so much rest that I want to do. I got to move into the renew as well.
Illuminate for me the difference that you're feeling with recreate and renew, if there is a difference.
Oh, you are good at this. I love it. It feels more like the tangible. Renew feels like the what you can't get your hands on, the etheric, the esoteric, the emotional, sentient realm that is in the renewal. And then you move and flow with that to the recreation in a form. So formless to form, renew to recreate.
I love that, because this is the process that we're going through together as we're walking to recreate, where you've been in the restoration. You've done so much of that work. You've rested, you've come back to your wholeness. And in this renewal phase, in our time together, renewing what you want to be putting out into the world in your business, that then becomes that recreation, that physical form that we're putting into the world in your website, in your booking system, and how people find you. The anatomy of that soul signature in my work with clients is a concentric circle where there's three circles, and at the very center is that essence. And that reminds me of the restore, come back to essence. On the second level, it's the embodiment. It's coming into the body in this maybe renewed phase, or it renews over time. And then the expression is that manifested form of the essence as well as the embodiment. I love that it all is flowing together.
When you said concentric, I thought of they come in and they go back out. They come in and they go back out. And I think about how I have been at work in restoration in order to bring something forward anew, that there's this aspect within me that has done a deeper dive more recently into what it is to live in that embodied way. I feel like what wants to come through anew is that deeper sense of what embodiment feels like for me today versus a few years ago, that I'm in a new relationship too.
Beautiful. It feels like we've identified your yoga work, your experience as a practitioner as well as a teacher. Then there's also this whole embodiment aspect that you're speaking to. And I know that there's other pieces of the work that you do with your clients. Can you just lay them all out for me right now in our gather phase?
Oh, wow.
And it doesn't have to be small, individual, bite-sized pieces. It could
Yeah.
be categories of work that you do or have done.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I can go back decades with the different ways that I have worked with embodiment. When I was teaching kids, I was creating curiosity moments, and I was in the field of having them know that they are magical and beautiful just as they are. And to learn and grow is part of living an embodied life. So my career started there professionally anyway, I did some other work in relationships with people. Wherever I've worked, it's always been about being in relationship with people. And the work was what was done on behalf of those relationships that I would form and connect to people. So I've done a lot of different kinds of work because I'm always called to what's next that will help me learn and grow and live in a more embodied way in myself and with others. So I think I bring that as a foundational piece from my 20s now into my 60s. I went from working with kids to working with adults as a licensed mental health therapist. That's a different population to help them see who they are and grow. It's the same story, if you will, in a sense of understanding and remembering who we are and looking at how we may or may not define ourselves in ways that support moving forward in life and embodying life. While I was training as a therapist, I was also coming into my yoga practice and started teaching in the late 90s. I used my yoga teachings with my clients in the mental health world, as well as with the public to expand their own definition of who they were. In addition to that movement, I grew up in a dance movement, jazz and ballet as a kid. So I've always been movement oriented. I also added in exploring Tai Chi. After 20 years of yoga, I started exploring Tai Chi as movement. Because my practice, I wanted to integrate slower, more graceful movements. So I became Tai Chi Fit, blending Tai Chi and yoga together as a fusion. I think I'm one of those kind of people that likes to be eclectic and say, what is the way that brings us to a more expansive sense of who we are? I like to have a whole lot of different tools in my toolbox. So another tool that I practice that's a little bit different is I guide people in writing what is called the creation exercise template practice. And this is the way to access the mind to become more clear in who you are and to let go of those belief systems, those ways of seeing yourself that may not be so accurate, but they've gotten entrenched by our culture and by our life experiences. So I use that within my coaching. I use yoga and other movement within my coaching. And I use my superpower of being present, just showing up and allowing people discovery of who they are through listening and an intuitive guidance system that I've gotten pretty good at over the years through a lot of work, through a lot of my own personal evolution and embodiment practices. That's what's in my brain at this moment.
Is there anything else that's left in the body?
Movement is somatic for me. It is the innate way in which I experience the world and exchange and am who I am is through the movement of energy, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, spiritual energy. So my spiritual side is just so much of who I am that it's the part that feels like it's hard to put into form and to define. And yet I see the evidence of the spiritual essence of me in everything I do.
I want to let that one sit a little bit. You see the spiritual essence of you in everything that you do.
Mhm.
Can you say more about what you see or how you know that spiritual essence is there in everything you do?
What people call synchronicities or the butterfly effect, or what I might call the relationship to the natural world that I interact with that includes people but goes beyond people to the animals, the nature, the elements. I live in the desert. So we had our first monsoon rain yesterday. And I had said to my husband 2 or 3 days ago, okay, let's start talking to the sky and the clouds and let's ask them it's time for a rain. We do need a rain. So we just kept paying attention to the clouds and saying, okay, you look like you want to give us something. You look like it. And so after 3 days, the clouds opened up and gave us a half an inch of rain. In the desert, that's a lot. That's a magic. That's a spiritual magic that we carry to be in relationship to the element of rain. And that's part of how I know I'm spiritually connected when I'm in relationship too and saying, how do we work this out? I don't know when it's going to happen, but I just trust that if I stay in relationship with the rain, it will grace us. I think that's part of the original way in which we as people on the planet have operated over the thousands of years. And we've just gotten away from that relationship in our current culture. That's part of how my spiritual relationship shows up through elemental things and also through conversation, that deeper listening. Like, here's that podcast. It's evidence, you and I sitting and listening. And this month, we're talking about how that came into being. And if I had not made space in my life for being in conversation, then it would not have its form now. So there's that deep trust that through that listening and through that relationship, I can be in that co-creative process that brings something into form, whether it's rain or a podcast or my beautiful puppy dog that I did my creation writing practices to be in relationship, and she came into our lives. So it's a lot of different ways that it shows up.
I love that the words that are pulling through as you're talking about what you've done, the chapters of your life, the way that you have related to each of those chapters, the words that are pulling through are relationship, embodiment, trust has become a really big one in the conversation so far. How are those landing in your body when I say them?
They just feel so resonant, familiar. It is the nature of who I am.
I'm seeing the glow model at work in your life already. You said I like to have a lot of tools in my tool belt, and specifically an example of moving from one to another and choosing another tool when you said I wanted slower, more mindful movement. And so I started to bring Tai Chi into my yoga practice. And that's that beautiful self of yours saying, wait a second, there's something that wants to be integrated and brought together here, and the trust to go out and actually do it. So I'm curious if you think through or feel into those different transitions that you've made where you've started to integrate different pieces. Is there a common thread between them that you've noticed or that you are noticing that feels like it's not resonate with your practice as you, not the practices that you've picked up and learned from other teachers?
One of the words that comes through is choice. And another word that comes through is, let me see if I can get the word or words. It's like the get going on something and then it drops off. Those are a couple of ways I've noticed. I have all the tools, I have the deep passion, and over the last couple of decades, I have the capacity for the tools and the passion. And there's some way in which it doesn't quite get translated into the form. It doesn't always happen from the etheric to the physical when it comes to putting it into the world. I do the work for myself and I complete all of these. I get the gems from all of the pieces of work that I do. And then to translate that, there's something that gets lost.
So if we go back to the beginning of our conversation when we're talking about restoration, renewal, recreation, and also that essence, embodiment, expression, I'm hearing there's a gap between that middle phase and the next phase, either between renew and recreate or embody and express.
That feels right.
So it's like you're gathering all this information, you're playing with it inside of the laboratory that is yourself, and really fully embodying it or renewing yourself into that wholeness, that expansion for yourself. And then when it comes time to then share it with the rest of the world, what does it feel like to you?
Well, when you use the word gap, I was like, sometimes it feels like a gap and sometimes it feels like a chasm. I know full well everything that I carry is fully present and ready and able to be available to others. And that I want that gift, those gems to be available. But there's this off the side of the cliff kind of huge chasm that happens that it doesn't get translated to the world so that people can benefit from it.
I'm going to ask this somatically to you. So feel free to close your eyes to tune in to whatever comes up for you. When you are at that gap or chasm, does it feel more like there's something holding you back from bridging that gap, or that there isn't a bridge over the gap yet?
No bridge.
No bridge. Okay. Okay. How did that feel in your body?
There's a bit of not understanding. My mind is not understanding why there's no bridge, but the rest of the body is in this heart in a little bit of sadness that the bridge isn't there. And then there's this other part of my belly and my legs and my arms that are like, I just want this done. Enough already. I just want the bridge. I don't understand why it's not there. I'm sad that it's not there. Why did I show up today? I want to build the freaking bridge so that I can just let the work come.
Ooh, I want to build a bridge. Let me tune in and see where things want to go. Again, somatic question. Is there anything within the gap or chasm that still needs to be known to you?
Quite possible. Because even as I said, I want to build a bridge, my system said, well, what if something else is supposed to build the bridge on behalf of you? If you can be in relationship to rain and the universe creation responds and opens up for rain, well, why can't you just request that a bridge be built? I'm like, absolutely, because that is the nature of it. And I had this flashback to one of our podcast conversations about knowing I'm held by that which I can't see, but I can feel it. And I may not know, but I know I'm always held in the net of life. And it's like, well, if you know that's true, then you can request the net of life to co-create the bridge with you.
Beautiful. And that requires that trust that it might not come at the exact time that I'm thinking that it'll come. And I'm going to keep showing up
Yes.
and asking, requesting.
And solar plexus heart activating on that is saying, do you understand this is the work? This is what you do. This is what you can offer others. It's going into that place within myself that does this work and says, okay, well, let me just get on to that. And then create some pathway, some way for others to go through this process that I'm in the middle of right now.
Yeah.
And the form is what I already do.
Your superpower is the form. Let's open up that process. What is the process that you're going through right in this moment to be in relationship with whatever the sources are that are going to co-create this bridge for you, that you would bring your clients along?
It's those three things that we said: trust, relationship, embodiment. It's that way in which I know, okay, the work to do to get here, to get the bridge built, is trusting in the webbing, is paying attention to what it is that my soul would love for me to have, to grow, to embody. And it's what are the ways, what are the tools that are called upon? Because my brain was already saying, okay, do your creation templates practice to build a bridge. It was already informing me, here's how you go about doing it. So the same process that I was seeing what would bring the form is the same process that I would take someone else through. But it's not quite clear to me yet, the full illumination of that process.
What I'm hearing, to reflect back, is starting out with the trust that there can be a relationship with whatever we need to be in relationship with to co-create our reality. That trust is huge and probably the hardest part of the process, honestly. And then as we build that trust and get into relationship with that other co-creative source, there's an intuition on which tool to pull from. And that is deep wisdom that you can draw on for your clients because you've had so many years of building your tool belt. And for us as providers, as stewards of these practices and practices that we create for ourselves and for our people, that's a gift that we bring because we're excited about learning all those tools, and not everybody wants to learn all of them. And that's okay because we're the geeks.
I'm an embodiment geek.
I love that. The whole process is where your intuition and your support and your heart come into play to support your clients. And that wealth of knowledge, that wealth of wisdom that you have for the tools to build that bridge is where you can dive in and say, okay, this is the tool to work with right now. Let me teach you this tool so that we can build that bridge together, or you and this other source can build that bridge together. How does this feel as it reflects back?
What's amazing to me is that in my desire to build the bridge to others, the work for others is building the bridge back to themselves.
Oh,
It makes me a little weepy. The very nature of who I am and what I want to do is in service of those who want something of their own in their own lives. Building a bridge relieves the gap, the chasm. If you have a bridge and you look over and see the chasm of what is beneath you, it's no longer your fears, longings, everything's in there. And when I looked down into that chasm earlier, I was like, it's full of trees. It has beautiful stone beings. There's so much life teeming in the chasm. And I'm at that threshold of saying, oh, all I need to do is build a bridge. Okay, well, then how do I go about doing that? And that would be true for any client that I work with. All we need to do is support you to build your own bridge to what is your next. Wow, that's just kind of startling and exciting. And it doesn't feel like all of the depth of the chasm that you could look down and feel overwhelmed by. Wow, it's such a huge chasm. It really is just simply build a bridge. I'm like, really? The most profound things can be like, duh, it's just that simple. And it's not that simple.
the profundity of it is the chasm, and it's the depth of the self. I love that you said building a bridge back to themselves because there's so much journey within that. When you're building a bridge back to yourself, once you've built the bridge, you realize you never needed the bridge in the first place because you're coming home yourself, right? And it takes building the bridge and learning to build the bridge to be able to come back to yourself. It's like The Alchemist. Sorry, it's going to be a spoiler. For anyone who hasn't read it yet, skip ahead. At the end of The Alchemist, he comes home and finds what he was looking for at home. And he couldn't have found it if he hadn't gone on the journey in the first place, learning to build that bridge.
I'm going to have to go back and read my copy of The Alchemist again. And what's so beautiful about that, I do love the word alchemy. I do resonate with that word. And now I have more of a depth of understanding of how that resonates for me. In the alchemy of turning lead to gold and going on this journey, the one piece that I didn't mention moving forward, which is so interesting to me right now, is that I do have this craving to create a women's wisdom circle, to invite women into this journey of bridging back to themselves. And in creating your own bridge back to yourself, the magic, the ways in which magic happens that builds that bridge one slat at a time and ropes to hang on to. I mean, I just see this whole imagery of how source holds you up as it takes and builds the next slat and the next ropes to walk along. While it may seem like you're a third of the way out and there's no rope, no slats in front of you yet, but you're being held instead of falling in. Or even if it does let loose and you plop back to the baseline along the chasm wall, you're still holding on, right? So you might have a moment where you kind of 2 steps back, it happens, and then all of a sudden the next step, the next slat is created. I feel like this whole image of how that goes then becomes part of me building the bridge for the women's circle so that I can take them through that journey, that process of building their own bridge back to themselves. Wow.
And it's that trust that every next step, every next slat will reveal itself as you continue along the bridge and taking those steps that I think is just, I feel is such a gift of yours. And it also removes that terrifying depth of the chasm because when we think of a rope bridge, it's like, you got to get both ends of the bridge up at the same time. Otherwise, there's no bridge. There's no step to take. But in the way that you're talking about it, we don't have to have it all figured out. We don't have to have it all put together. We don't even have to have all of the string when we get started. We just have to get started. I had this image in my head of, I think it's Star Wars. Here's my other version of geek coming out when they're standing at two edges and there's just a chasm below them and no way to get across. And then one of them thinks to pick up some dirt and throw it across. And as I'm saying this, I'm like, maybe it's Indiana Jones, but they throw some dirt over it and it reveals that there is a pathway already. It's just a hidden pathway. That was the imagery that was coming to me as you were talking about that trust, that revelation process.
That's really interesting. And maybe all you have to do is throw some dirt out there and the universe responds and builds it up.
Yeah.
So you could just walk across it and you don't even have to have a bridge.
Yes.
Like I did say unimaginable.
And the universe works in ways that science hasn't figured out yet, all the ways, right? And more geek comes to mind of in video games, we have to have that trust. So often there is that chasm and you need to cross from one side to the other. And you try all these things that you know are possible, like jumping across or launching yourself across or whatever it is. And then after going through the game over and over and over again, you get to it again and you're like, why don't I just try walking? You know, what's the worst that can happen? I've died so many times already. And then you walk and the universe rises up to meet you and the bridge is built as you walk.
Interesting. We just don't know what we don't know. Wow.
Oh, what's settling in you?
What's settling is I know more now about the gap and that I'm just going to be working with that gap to have more clarity about what it is to build a bridge over a gap and take all of the parts of the gap that work with me. I'm not doing it alone. The gap is there to help me too. That's different to think of a gap like that. To be in relationship to the gap and to whatever way it's going to happen. It rained in 3 days. I just asked for it. Okay, show me the way to build this bridge. I don't know exactly the details of it. And since I do have a profound relationship with trust, then being in relationship with how to build the bridge over the gap, I've got that. I know that that's with me. And then using my tools that I have in my tool belt to get started, what I already know, and then see what shows up. And that's my curiosity. I don't know what's going to show up. How is that bridge going to get built?
Oh my gosh, I love it. I love it. And this idea that part of the relationships that you are teaching people how to build is a relationship to the gap itself, because the gap is there so that we have a reason to build the bridge. So we have a reason to learn to build the bridge in the first place.
Amazing. That's good. I like that. And so now I know why I have the deep passion to recreate a women's circle. I know why it has not come into form yet. I need to build the bridge to it. And one of those little things is our culture says it needs to happen now. And as I said, enough already. I'm not getting any younger and I want to complete this. I want this vision to come. And at the same time, it's like, yes, and you need to build a bridge. So here you go. Get busy on that and Time will take care of itself. The brain wants what it wants sometimes, and it gets a little fixed on that. It kind of gets perpetuated from that. So I have to appreciate that that little brain belief system is in the gap.
This is amazing. I am in awe of what is coming through. And I would love to talk about your offerings and if there's anything that has shifted since we first started talking. Is it the Women's Wisdom Circle that is that gem that you're wanting to build the bridge for? Are there other pieces that are wanting to come through?
That's probably the big component that is what I want to do personally. That is my signature piece. So I recognize that takes all of the different components of everything I've done and creates a program that I lead. Something else that's in the gap that's showing up for me right now is I have always had that tendency, it's more fun together, to collaborate with others is more fun, more rich, more full. So I have to recognize while that is true, it's also fun, rich, fulfilling if I do something that is solely mine. So there's a little piece in the gap to work with about it is a good thing to bring something forward just from me. Everything doesn't always have to be done in a collaborative way. I just launched a collaborative yoga workshop day with another yoga friend of mine. As I think about it, I've gone through the same process. It launches in July, and she had sent me an update. No one had, when we put the information out, no one had signed up immediately. And I said, okay. And I went into trust mode and I went into relationship with the co-creative forces. And I put out a request of a group of mine, the Energy Intuitive Wisdom group community. And I said, please join me in seeing 10 plus participants in this to put the request out, just as I would put a request out for rain. And I will go to an event this afternoon, a networking event, and share some flyers about it. So I see how I'm moving through this process myself. So I have that project. And of course, I'm totally loving being in collaboration for the podcast. There's been something said into the etherics about doing a retreat. And I see how these different collaborative and soul components feed each other. And they're different sources that come together to fulfill the wholeness from different sources. And then in the coaching aspect, I'm not sure how that grows, individual coaching, or if it becomes a group coaching experience that I step into. So that feels really more on the unknown of being in the chasm. I don't know where I want to take that.
I love this question around collaborating, co-creating compared to bringing something forth fully from yourself. One thing that came up as you were talking specifically about the Women's Wisdom Circle and having that be something that is fully from yourself and there being something in the chasm of like must collaborate. And I want to remind you and bring forth that your Women's Wisdom Circle, all the women in there are going to be co-creating with you, even if you're the one leading.
Absolutely.
There's no need to bring other people in to help you guide it. And you already know that. We had a conversation about another person wanting to help you out and the universe saying, nope, you've got this. So it sounds like the Women's Wisdom Circle is the front page of what you're bringing into the world and what you want to display as that expression or as that recreation on the other side of the chasm.
Yeah, and a minute ago, I just drawn that remembrance forward. A very dear friend of mine transitioned, passed over recently. And she and I, and a number of other women over time, there were 3, 4 of us that founded a women's wisdom circle back in the 90s. And the fact that this is coming back into my remembrance now and reconnecting with some of those women who were the foundational crones of the group, if you will. I trust that as the relationship of yes, You're in your timing of bringing a new one forward, and that I can look back to the gems. We met every other Friday night for years. Our whole lives were oriented with a commitment to that. And while that may not be, that was a special moment in time of a group of women who committed to walk a journey with each other. Two of them had passed, and now the third one, and we were the core. So I'm the one left of the original core. I don't think I realized until this moment that I was the only one left of the four of us that brought it forward.
It's craving a new iteration, a recreation.
Yeah, that's the recreation.
Wow.
Wow. Whatever just moved in you while you were listening, that's real.
This excavation continues next week in part 2. We pick up right where this landed with the realizations that just surfaced and what begins to take shape on the other side of them. We'll also tell you about something magical we're building together in response to this excavation experience.
Thank you for diving deep with us into generative listening. If this episode stirred something in you, subscribe to keep restoring with us. And if someone came to mind while you were in your own generative listening, share this episode with them. Because when women gather, something ancient and necessary awakens.
We are YSM Conversations, connecting back to the deeper currents on behalf of seeding our next collective wholeness.